Imagine a top government official, under oath, admitting that the entire foundation of their agency's independence has collapsed.
And not just admitting it, but being forced into it, word by word, in a really explosive Senate hearing.
That is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're talking about the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. This is the body that holds the keys to every broadcast television and radio station in America.
And this wasn't just, your typical political theater in Washington. This was a really aggressive, targeted interrogation of SEC Commissioner Brendan Carr.
A figure who's become incredibly controversial lately.
To say the least.
Yeah.
He's the regulator who went public and essentially told networks critical of the president that they had to, and I'm quoting here, change conduct or risk losing their broadcast licenses.
So we've sifted through a mountain of material on this, hearing transcripts, legal analyses, news reports to really get to the bottom of it. And our mission today is to pull out the 3 biggest revelations from that hearing, because they fundamentally redefine the relationship between the White House, our federal regulators, and frankly, the freedom of the press.
Right. This isn't just some, bureaucratic infighting. We're talking about a structural threat to how our media operates and, you could argue, to our democracy itself.
The central question that got answered in that hearing room was this: is the FCC an impartial, expert body protecting the public interest?
Or is it just a political tool for the president, an arm of the executive branch to pressure his enemies?
And we got a definitive answer under oath. It's alarming. Let's just jump right into that first huge revelation.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we have to start with what I think is one of the most stunning legal admissions I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah.
It's the one that actually forced the FCC to quietly scramble and change its own website in the middle of a hearing.
It's incredible. The questioning was led by Senator Ben Ray Lujan, a Democrat from New Mexico.
Yeah.
And he was just relentless.
He wasn't asking a complicated question. It was simple, binary. Is the FCC an independent agency? Yes or no?
And that phrase, independent agency, it just carries so much legal weight in the U.S.
It's everything.
It's the whole bedrock for bodies like, the Federal Reserve or the Federal Trade Commission. They're supposed to be insulated from the White House, from short-term political pressure.
They're supposed to be the experts, the technocrats doing long-term regulation.
Exactly. And Senator Lujan knew there was a legal weak spot here. So he just hammered Carr for a simple yes or no.
And Carr's response was it was an excruciating series of evasions. He was trying to pivot, talking about how Congress oversees the agency, how the test for this in the law is complicated.
But Lujan just kept bringing it back. He wouldn't let him off the hook. He said, the American public deserves a clear answer.
And finally, after all that squirming, the concession just falls out of his mouth. He says, formally speaking, the FCC is not an independent agency.
And that's the moment. That's the whole game.
Right. But for you, the listener, it's so important to understand why he had to say that. What's the legal mechanism here?
Okay, so this is where we really dig in. Agency independence isn't just a tradition. It hinges on a specific legal protection called for cause removal.
Unpack that for us. For cause removal, what does that mean?
It means the president can only fire a commissioner for a specific, serious reason that's actually written into the law.
Like what?
Things like inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office, really serious stuff.
So not just because they disagree on a policy vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if an agency has that protection, the Supreme Court decided way back in 1935 in a landmark case called Humphrey's Executor that the agency is functionally independent. The president can't just clean house if he's unhappy with it.
It's part of the separation of powers, keeping the executive branch from doing the job of other branches of government.
Precisely. Now here's the kicker. Here's the historical accident that Carr got trapped by.
Okay.
The Communications Act, the law that created the FCC, was passed in 1934.
A year before that Supreme Court decision.
1 full year before. So because of that timing, Congress just didn't write for cause removal protection into the law for FCC commissioners. The concept hadn't really been legally cemented yet.
Wait, so this is all because of a historical fluke? They just missed it?
Essentially, yes. For decades, people just sort of assumed it was implied. There was a legal theory that courts would just read that protection into the law because of how the FCC functions.
But that's not the case anymore.
No. Carr had to admit that's not the prevailing legal consensus today, which forced him to admit the big one. The president can fire any FCC commissioner.
For any reason.
For no reason or any reason at all. His words.
That just changes everything. It means the FCC isn't a neutral body. Legally, structurally, it's just an extension of the White House.
An agency that oversees our entire communications infrastructure is, at the end of the day, politically subservient to the president.
The gravity of that is it's immense. The president has total, unchecked leverage over every single decision they make.
And if you need any more proof that this was a bombshell, you just have to look at what happened next. The institutional deception it exposed in real time.
This is the gotcha moment. It's my favorite part of the whole hearing.
It's amazing. While Carr is on camera being grilled, the FCC's own homepage,
their official website,
is telling the whole world that the FCC is an independent U.S. government agency overseen by Congress.
And Senator Lujan had it printed out. He holds it up and asks Carr straight up, is your website lying to the American people?
And Carr is just trapped. He can only say, I can't speak to what's on the website right now. He's hedging because he knows.
It's this massive contradiction. The agency has been pretending to be independent for 90 years, writing it on their own homepage.
But the legal reality, which he was just forced to admit, is the complete opposite.
And they knew it, because this wasn't something they corrected a week later. They were changing the website while the hearing was still going on.
The source material is explicit. Immediately after Carr made that concession, the FCC's web team went in and deleted the words independent agency from their description.
That's not just cleaning up a typo.
No, that's an admission of guilt. It's a validation of the entire critique. They were caught propagating a lie about their own structure and had to fix it on the fly because a senator held up a printout.
So you have to ask yourself, if an agency that regulates something as fundamental as free speech on our airwaves has been, lying about its independence for decades, what faith can anyone have that their decisions are based on expertise and not just political orders?
Very little. The moment he admitted the lack of for-cause removal, he confirmed that every action he takes is through the lens of someone who knows he can be fired tomorrow for upsetting the president.
The idea that they operate outside of short-term political interest is it's dead.
It's dead. And that leads us right into the next section. How that political subservience is being actively used to silence critics.
Okay, so we're shifting now from the FCC's structural weakness to how that weakness is being exploited.
Right. This is where the accusations of, federal censorship really come into play. It all centers on Commissioner Carr's actions toward Jimmy Kimmel.
And to really get the gravity of Carr's threat, we need to understand the weapon he was using. It's called the public interest standard.
Yeah, and this is a really unique regulatory tool. It only applies to broadcast airwaves, so traditional TV and radio. Not cable, not the internet.
Why the distinction?
Because the airwaves are considered public property. They're a limited resource that belongs to the American people.
It's a public trust model, right? The government licenses the spectrum to a company.
Exactly. It's a temporary license to use a public resource. And in exchange for that valuable license, the broadcaster has an obligation to operate in the public interest.
Now that sounds incredibly vague.
It is vague by design. But over the years, specific rules have come from it, like the broadcast hoax rule. You can't air fake information that might cause a public panic. Or rules about indecency and the news distortion rule.
So there are some established boundaries.
There are. But Carr took this vague, powerful standard and aimed it like a weapon directly at political critics of the president.
Let's get into the specifics of the Kimmel incident.
Okay, so it starts with a political monologue from Jimmy Kimmel that was, very critical of the former president.
Pretty standard for late night TV.
Right, but the response from Commissioner Carr was not standard at all. It was public, and the quote from the source material is just. It's astonishing for a regulator.
What did he say?
He said the broadcast companies, and he meant ABC and its owner, Disney, could do this the easy way or the hard way.
The easy way or the hard way. That sounds like a threat from a movie.
It does. And he went on to say they must change conduct or take action frankly on Kimmel, or they would face additional work for the FCC ahead.
Additional work for the FCC is a very clear threat of investigations and potential license revocation.
It's not subtle. And the reaction in the Senate from both sides of the aisle showed how far out of bounds this was.
Senator Ed Markey immediately called it what it was, a weaponizing of the public interest standard.
And importantly, even senior Republicans saw the danger. Chairman Ted Cruz, who is no political moderate, called Carr's action dangerous as hell. He said the FCC should absolutely not be in the business of threatening licenses over political content.
So the core issue here is you have an FCC commissioner who we now know serves at the pleasure of the president, using the immense power of his office to intimidate networks over political comedy.
It sets an incredibly dangerous precedent. And this gets to the legal heart of the matter, which Senator Brian Schatz really pushed on during the hearing.
He asked the key question.
Yes. Does the FCC even believe it has jurisdiction over political satire under the public interest standard?
Because if the answer is yes, then the government can essentially censor any political joke it doesn't like.
It's a doorway to prior restraint. And Carr's answer was a masterclass in deflection, but it was also incredibly revealing.
What was his dodge?
He kept saying that satire that isn't related to a hoax or news distortion is perfectly fine, but he refused repeatedly to just say, no, we don't have that authority.
He wouldn't say the FCC lacks the power to revoke a license if it decides satire isn't in the public interest?
He would not say it. He kept falling back on this general idea that the FCC has jurisdiction over the airwaves uniquely to ensure that their operations are in the public interest. By refusing to deny the power, he was effectively claiming it.
But come on, if the FCC actually tried to pull a license just because they didn't like a political joke, that would get thrown out of court in 5 minutes, wouldn't it? The First Amendment would crush that.
You're absolutely right. Most legal experts agree a direct revocation over satire would almost certainly fail a constitutional challenge. But that's the whole point.
He's not trying to win in court.
He doesn't need to. The goal isn't to win the legal battle. It's to make sure the battle never happens by changing the network's behavior beforehand. It's all about the chilling effect. A public threat from the most powerful communications regulator in the country is more than enough.
And the hypocrisy here is just glaring. Senator Markey brought up Carr's own words from the past.
Yeah, this was a great moment. Markey confronted him with a tweet Carr wrote in 2022.
What did it say?
In it, Carr passionately defended political satire as one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech that challenges those in power. He even noted that it's often the first thing targeted for censorship.
So he's on record defending the very thing he's now threatening.
And his response was so telling. He said he still agrees with that sentiment, that satire should be protected. But then he immediately added the escape hatch. Any other programming is over the public airways. For broadcasters, there's a public interest standard.
So he uses his own defense of free speech as like a rhetorical shield.
Exactly. It's camouflage. He's trying to sound principled while actively threatening a specific person for using that exact form of speech against the president who appointed him.
It's the ultimate regulatory doublespeak. Which brings us to the moment where he was asked, point blank, if he regretted making the threat against Kimmel.
A critical moment for accountability. A simple yes or no question.
And his answer.
Pure bureaucratic deflection. He said, Senator Markey, thank you for the question. My job is to enforce the law as passed by Congress that includes a public interest standard.
That's not an answer. That's him hiding behind his job description to avoid taking any responsibility for his own words.
Absolutely. By refusing to say he regrets the threat, he's reinforcing it. He's saying it was a legitimate use of his power.
And he later tried to argue that the network's next star, Sinclair, Disney, they just made their own business decisions to preempt Kimmel's monologue in some markets.
Right, but he refuses to acknowledge that those business decisions were made with a gun to their head. They were made under the shadow of his direct public threat of additional work for the FCC ahead.
The chilling effect wasn't an accident. It was the entire point.
It was the goal. And when you have a regulator using a vague but powerful standard to target political enemies, the entire regulatory system becomes a tool for political control. It just guts the First Amendment.
Which brings us to the third and maybe most chilling revelation from the hearing. It's about political allegiance. If the FCC is not an independent agency, then whose interests does the chairman actually serve? Senator Kim was relentless on this point, and it all boiled down to one very blunt question.
Is President Trump your boss?
Just asking that question of an FCC commissioner is a huge break from historical norms.
A massive break. For decades, commissioners, no matter which president appointed them, were always so careful to emphasize their loyalty was to the American people, to the Constitution, to the law.
Right, to maintain at least the appearance of being nonpartisan.
It's essential for regulatory fairness. Carr did not do that.
Instead, he made a series of concessions that, when you put them all together, basically confirmed the senator's point.
He admitted, 1, the president designated him as chairman.
Okay.
2, that he is aligned with President Trump on policy.
A big admission.
And 3, the one we already covered, that he can be fired by the president for any reason.
So he admits all that, but when asked a simple question, is he your boss?
He dodged. He said commission decisions are based on a vote of the 3 members.
Which is another non-answer.
It's a huge evasion. And Senator Kim's point was, look, if you can't just say unequivocally that the American people are your boss and the president is not your boss, especially after admitting he can fire you on a whim, then you don't have the independence for this job.
His refusal to draw that line is basically confirmation. He sees himself as an agent of the president.
And this wasn't just some hypothetical philosophical debate. The senators brought receipts. They brought specific evidence of direct pressure from the president.
Yeah, Senator Kim pointed to a social media post from Donald Trump on August 24th.
This is a matter of public record. In the post, Trump explicitly demands that the FCC revoke the licenses of ABC and NBC.
And what was his reasoning?
He labeled them fake news and an actual threat to our democracy. It was a direct order, a public pressure campaign for the FCC to censor his critics.
The timeline here is just damning. The president demands censorship.
And then the commissioner, who admits he's aligned with the president and can be fired at any moment, goes out and issues threats against one of those exact networks.
It paints a very clear picture of political control over what's supposed to be an insulated agency.
And that picture gets even clearer when you look at the cross-examination from Senator Amy Klobuchar. She focused on selective enforcement.
Bias.
Exactly. She pointed out a pattern that just destroys any claim that Carr was just neutrally applying the public interest standard.
What was the pattern?
She observed that Commissioner Carr has launched, or threatened to launch, investigations into nearly every major broadcast network, ABC, NBC, CBS. But there is one glaring, massive exception.
Let me guess. Fox News.
He has launched no such investigations or made any similar threats against Fox News.
So his enforcement priorities just happen to align perfectly with the political enemies list of the president he served.
It looks that way. If broadcasters are violating the public interest standard left and right, why is the one network that's generally supportive of the president's political agenda totally immune?
How did Carr respond to that?
He tried to deny it. He claimed he didn't know if that was true, and then he tried to distract by bringing up investigations into public broadcasters like NPR and PBS.
Which is a totally different thing.
It's a completely different model. He had no real justification for the pattern of only targeting networks critical of the president.
But that selective enforcement is the smoking gun, really. It proves the political motivation.
It is. It sends a message to every single broadcaster in the country. Criticize the president, and you might have a regulatory problem. Praise him, and you'll be left alone.
And this all led up to this one devastating closing line from Senator Markey. He just boiled down the entire outcome of Carr's actions into a new, unofficial title for him. He said, "You're now the chairman of the Federal Censorship Commission."
And that label really stuck because the effect of Carr's actions was censorship, even without a formal order.
Right, the business decisions we talked about, broadcasters preempting Kimmel's show.
They did it out of fear. The threat itself acted as a form of prior restraint on speech. The intimidation worked exactly as it was designed to.
And Senator Klobuchar really drove this point home by highlighting the double standard. She brought up the president's own rhetoric.
This was a sharp exchange. She referenced the president's commentary about an attack on the actor Rob Reiner, which he attributed to Trump derangement syndrome.
Okay.
And she asked Carr if Kimmel had said something like that, would he be threatening to take him off the air? Do the president's own words meet this public interest standard you're so concerned about?
And Carr's response?
Again, deflection. He accused the Democrats of trying to get him to police speech on the internet, completely dodging the question about the president's own statement.
It just highlights the selective outrage. The standard is aggressively applied to the president's critics on TV, but it's completely off limits when it comes to the president himself.
It screams political motivation, not neutral enforcement of the law.
So let's pull all three of these threads together for you because it's a pretty stark picture.
It really is.
First, you have a powerful federal agency, the FCC, that has now admitted under oath that it is not, in fact, independent of the president.
Then you have the chairman of that agency actively weaponizing its most potent and vague regulatory tool, the public interest standard, to specifically target political critics.
And finally, you have that same chairman refusing to deny that the president is his boss, all while engaging in what appears to be selective, politically motivated enforcement.
When you put those three things together, it's not just a small problem. It's a fundamental challenge to the constitutional separation of powers.
The FCC was meant to be a neutral expert check on power.
Instead, what we've seen is evidence that it's becoming a political weapon for the White House, used to intimidate the media. The sources described it as not American FCC behavior. And it really does raise the question of whether the First Amendment can even function properly when a key media regulator loses its independence.
The power this gives the president over the flow of information is it's catastrophic. If the regulator can be fired for any reason, and that regulator uses that vulnerability to pressure networks into censoring themselves,
then the whole First Amendment defense against government intrusion just evaporates. Intimidation is so much more efficient than a court battle.
And to put a final, very sharp point on this, you have to connect these actions to the broader political climate that the source material lays out.
This is a really crucial piece of context. The documents detail the actual content that President Trump had affixed to the walls of the White House during his term.
What kind of content?
Things like calling former President Biden the worst president who won the most corrupt election, or labeling former President Obama as one of the most divisive political figures.
So not historical records, just pure partisan attacks displayed as official history inside the White House.
Exactly. And that's not just a quirky detail. It's a window into the ideology that's driving this regulatory pressure. It's a mindset where political loyalty overrides any sense of neutrality or objective truth.
That is the dangerous blurring of lines, when the government's official history becomes pure political commentary.
And the government's communication regulator is confirmed to be a compliant tool to enforce that political line. Well, that's the kind of environment the sources describe as an authoritarian regime, with the FCC commissioner as its censorship czar.
So the structural vulnerability, the legal admission of non-independence, gives the president a chokehold on broadcast media. The next time you're watching the news, you have to wonder, are the stories you're not hearing a direct result of this chilling effect?
The threat is no longer theoretical, it's operational.
And it leaves you with a final question to think about. Now that this structural weakness has been exposed so publicly, is it time for Congress to step in and amend that 1934 Communications Act? Should they finally give FCC commissioners the for-cause removal protection that would restore the very independence the agency claimed to have for the last 90 years?